Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session of Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I am very excited to welcome Tarran and Olie back. For those who have been following along, Tarran and Olie just spent the last 5 months kayaking the length of the Amazon River, so 6,500 kilometers through all sorts of challenges. From they had to hike in to start. They were on the river going through dangerous territories. It was just an amazing trip, and so they're going to spend some time sharing their adventures with us today from that journey. For those who have followed all the way along, we had a connection with them in Lima, Peru, right before they left to start the journey, and then probably just over halfway we connected with them in Manaus, Brazil for another one, which was a really cool session because we got to see them in Peru, nice and clean, ready to start the trip, excited, and then we got these hairy characters in Manaus, Brazil. And if you take a look at the screen, you can see Tarran's cleaned up a little bit more, but Olie is still rocking the expedition beard. So good morning, guys. I'm going to let you guys take over and start talking and sharing a little bit. We'll introduce our classrooms when the question time comes.
Morning, everybody.
Hey, guys. How are you?
It's quite funny, Joe. You mentioned you saw a very different version of us, from the clean cut at the start to the bearded. What you failed to mention, the bearded bit in Manaus was bearded plus extremely tired. We were pretty shattered. We managed to find some reception outside the opera house there and sort of sit down for a little bit. I just looked at it back a couple of days ago, and we look absolutely shattered, which is hilarious. We're fully recovered now, though. Well, I say fully. We're almost recovered.
Yeah, we have. I suppose, we should just say Manaus was probably, I think it was early October, and we actually finished at the end of October, so we've had a good few months to kind of recover and rest and so on, and obviously we've enjoyed a little bit too much probably at Christmas. So we're now well fed.
That's always good. I should just say too that I hadn't really thought about this before, but looking at the classrooms who are joining us, you guys are wildly popular in New Jersey. In the United States. We have quite a few classrooms from New Jersey who followed along the whole way, and then we've got a nice little group in Ontario too who've been here from the beginning. So you're going to see as we meet the classrooms, there's even some classrooms from last year who come to the other classroom to take this in today. So it's really neat to see you had schools and classes following the whole way along.
That's awesome. We really loved having you guys following us, actually. It has been amazing, and that we've been able to share our journey with you guys and kind of give you a little bit of an insight into what the Amazon was like for us, and obviously going on an adventure like this as well. So yeah, it's been really cool.
Olie, do you want to kick it off by telling people we left you guys last time then at Manaus, and we left the day after we spoke to everybody, and headed for, really, the next destination was for the Atlantic, and it was the final stretch, shall we say. So we left the next morning, and I think we both reached a place that we'd been thinking about for some time of actually getting to the confluence, or the meeting of the waters, which is the joining of the Rio Solomos and the Rio Negro. And we took a good sort of hour there, Olie. We enjoyed ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is where the two different colours of water meet, but they don't mix for about 4 or 5 miles. That's about 7 or 8 kilometres. And the water just felt kind of different temperatures. The texture's different. We obviously got to drink from both sides, and we've got some pictures for you guys later. But yeah, you've got really dark water and a really sandy coloured water, and we got to taste both of those as well, which was, I mean, just the temperature of the water made it taste very different. So we spent about an hour there just taking photos, and it's just one of those natural phenomenons that kind of happens along the Amazon.
The reason why the water doesn't meet for about, as Olie said, quite some miles is because of the different. There's 2 or 3 different reasons. One is the temperature of the rivers is about 6 or 7 degrees difference, and one of them also has a lot more salt content, so there's a lot denser than the other one. So you'd be paddling along, and as you sort of both found, I think when you sort of research the Amazon, you see those massive winding bends, and you also see one of the standard images. You see the confluence of the two rivers. So it was something that we've been thinking about for some time, and it was really cool to hit that milestone and spend a bit of time sort of soaking it in. Obviously, once we'd managed to avoid some of the massive cargo ships going left and right of us.
All right, very cool. Well, I saw a tiny little clip where you guys reached the Atlantic. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that felt like?
Yeah, I'll let Ollie kick it off. The last 22 hours was, well, actually the last sort of 5 or 6 days were probably the most intense and toughest of the whole expedition, as you'd imagine, with the waves and the wind picking up, sort of dealing with sort of 15-foot waves. Ollie, you want to kick it off about the last 22 hours, mate, with the mangroves?
22 hours. So we got up at about 10:30 p.m. and the reason we got up at that time was because the tide was right. In fact, our tents were right on the edge of the water when we woke up, so we quickly had to pack our gear away. We had breakfast at 10:30 at night, and then we set off in the kayaks, and we had the wind blowing straight into this beach, and the first thing I did was capsize. So I then had to retreat back onto the beach, bail out all the water, and try and get back in the kayak and out again, out beyond the waves before I got knocked over again.
Ollie was just trying to make me feel good. I capsized the night before, so he was trying to make me feel good about capsizing the night before, and he was trying to even things up again. So it made me feel comfortable. I appreciate that, Ollie.
And then we then set off at about 11:30, and we paddled through the night. It was pitch black. We could hardly see anything. There wasn't much moonlight out either. And I just remember one really clear moment when we were paddling towards these lights that we could see on the horizon, and then they disappeared, and we had no idea where they'd gone, or why someone would switch the light off at 3 or 4 in the morning. And then we realized there was this huge sandbank that had just got in between us and the shore, and the sandbank was so tall that we couldn't see the light, which was now behind the other side of the sandbank. So we had a few navigational kind of tricky bits to get around, and eventually we got all the way around those, and we reached a point about 6:30 where the tide then started to turn again. We took the opportunity to have a really quick break out the kayaks. We were hoping we'd get about an hour and a half out of the kayaks to get some food and a hot drink and so on. In reality, we had 2 minutes. We literally had time to get out the kayak for a quick wee, and then back in the kayaks, and the water was already round our ankles, so we just had to sit the whole thing out in the kayaks. So, Tarran, move on to the next bit.
Yeah. So yeah, we basically waited in the sun for about sort of 6 hours. We kind of tied up to the mangrove trees. I think we'd end up changing trees about 4 or 5 times because the trees we were tied to, the branches would actually snap, or the water would rise too high, so we'd have to move on to a bigger tree. And you sort of sit there, and we're waiting for the 6 hours. We're trying to get some sleep. You sort of close your eyes and wait about a second before a wave hits you, and then you wake up again. So we're just sort of sitting there, and we ended up setting up in search of the sort of finish about an hour against the tide. We were kind of like a couple of F1 races, just sitting there etching to go because we really wanted to get going. And at this point, we weren't sure whether we were going to have to spend another 6 hours in the kayak or whether we'd be able to push on and make it to the finish. And I think we both sort of looked at each other and decided, let's sort of go for the finishing points, mainly because we didn't want to spend another 6 hours. We had no water at this point. We actually went from that point, we actually stopped and we ate porridge each. We had porridge each, but the only water we had at this point was water from the river, which was incredibly salty. So we, through trying to hold down the vomit, Ollie especially kind of dry heaved a few times, which was hilarious. But we managed to keep it down. But it probably, I think it was your favourite meal of the trip, wasn't it, Ollie?
Well, let's just say I was a little bit hungry by the end of it.
So yeah, after that we set off in for the finish line, and basically kayaking along. We were both a little sort of nervy given the waves were coming in sideways, and we both sort of recently capsized. So we'd set off and we were kayaking along against a lot of the wind because the river's so big, it really turns into an ocean there. the winds just sort of batter you through it. And as we're kind of kayaking, aiming for this final point, we're kayaking along, and the water is getting lower and lower, and we're thinking, okay, we can keep going straight, we'll make it to the final point. As it turns out, I think we both realized about 20 minutes into this, I guess, kayaking into this section, that the water was actually receding. The tide had turned quicker than we thought. So we jumped out of our kayaks and had to run about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, dragging our kayaks back to try and get back to the entrance bit. Otherwise, the tide would drain out and we'd be left stuck there for 6 hours. So we managed to get running back, which was hilarious. You can just imagine two of us absolutely shattered, just running along, dragging our kayaks to get back to the water. And then we followed the fishing boats all the way around towards the end. At one point, we stopped and we looked at the GPS and looked, how long is it until we finish? And I think Ollie sort of said we've got 2K to go. And I looked ahead, and both of us looked ahead, and we saw this fishing boat just bounce up and down like a pinball. We looked at each other and we're like, oh no. But we basically just continued on to the final couple of kilometers. Sort of 15-foot waves at the end, so we didn't have that long to really celebrate. We managed to nervously take off, I guess, take out sort of the cameras and the flags, and sort of very, very quickly give ourselves a little paddle high five and take a few snaps before heading back to the shoreline. But that was kind of the finishing point there, but it certainly wasn't the finish for us. We still had a few hours to go. You want to take it there, Ollie?
Yeah, well, the tide had obviously been going out at that point, so, and I don't think we'd realised quite how far down we'd drifted with that tide. So when we started aiming for the land again, and we knew exactly which river mouth we needed to head for, we made a beeline for it. But because we drifted down so far, we actually ended up paddling straight onto a sandbank. And that became a huge issue for us because we just got stuck on this sandbank and there was no way off it. The water had actually started coming in again. The tide had started coming in. So every time we kind of got off the sandbank, we just got washed further and further onto the sandbank again, onto another bit that was sticking out, and there wasn't enough water. And we spent 3 hours just basically sitting on this sandbank, just trying to get off it. Whichever way we moved, there was another sandbank in the way, and we were just completely stuck. And this was all happening at about, well, I suppose we got off finally at about 5:30, which is just when the sun starts to set, but we were nowhere near where we were going to land the kayaks, and that was going to be the end of the expedition. So we then spent another 3 hours. By this time the tide had changed again, and we were battling against the tide to get up this river mouth, and it was about another 3 hours before we actually hit land. So we got to the little village called São Caetano, right near the river mouth of the Amazon. We got there at about 9:30 p.m. and we were just absolutely shattered. We pulled our kayaks up onto this football pitch and just set up our tents and went out to go and find some food. We hadn't eaten for 22 hours. We were absolutely shattered. We were really dehydrated. We ran out of fresh water to drink. So it was really touch and go at the end. But at the same time, exhilarating. Having reached the end of such an epic trip, it was just it's a phenomenal kind of feeling to have.
Yeah, those last 6 hours after you reach the finish line, we could have done without them. We weren't really prepared for them. But once you're in the kayak, you just, as I was saying, you just keep going. There's like we actually, I think it took us about an hour and a half or 2 hours to travel like 5 kilometers just to get past this one corner where it was pitch black at this point. I remember kayaking along, the waves sort of bouncing up the kayaks, and we only had I hadn't got my head torch out, so we only had Ollie's head torch to use as guidance. So it was yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking until we got around this corner, and then the kind of moon, there was a full moon. The moon, we got quite lucky for the last sort of 5 or 6 days because we were paddling at night. We used effectively the moonlight to, I guess, to take us towards the Atlantic, which is quite awesome to think about. Yeah, but as Ollie said, yeah, we finished up and I think we wandered to town and found the only restaurant open at midnight. We stuffed our faces and then went back and fell asleep on the edge of this football pitch.
All right, well, guys, we're having a little bit of that. We had a little bit of voice interruption. So what I'm going to do for when we continue is I'm just going to turn off the classroom cameras for the moment. So classrooms, you'll still be there. Just don't panic if you don't see your moving images in the bottom screen. I can turn them back on, but I think that might save us a little bit of broadband. So I'm going to do that really quick. Just flick off these cameras, which should save us some broadband. And then I know you guys have some pictures prepared for us today if you'd want to share them and talk a little bit about them from the journey.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got a few pictures, basically just summing up the whole of the expedition. So some pictures from right at the source when we were walking, some pictures while we were walking, and some of the people we met. And then obviously once we get in the kayaks and paddling down the river. So hopefully you guys enjoy them. You may have seen some of them on the website or on the blogs and so on. But yeah, we'll just run through these fairly quickly. So just at the start, this is right at the source. So this was our guide, our shepherd called Mauro, and we'd hiked up to go and find him, and he was happy enough to take us to the source. So this picture is from the source of the Amazon ultimately, but also the start of the Rio Montaro. High up, it's about 4,500 meters up in the Andes.
This next picture is from one of the very cold mornings in the Andes. The temperature drops to as low as sort of -4, -5 degrees, and you can see the frost on the ground there. We managed to find a spot that, because it was so wide open, the wind obviously picks up and makes it incredibly cold. So we kind of camped down just below the little lip there to sort of get away from the wind. To the left, what you can't see, there's a little river there. So we had a fresh water very quickly. And in the morning, actually, in about 10 minutes after this photo was taken, I guess a dad and his son rode up to us on their horses, sort of saying good morning to us before they went off and round up some cattle. So it was about a week or so into it.
And this just shows you kind of the landscapes that we were walking through. So some of it was on dirt tracks, and the only way I can really describe this is sort of the high Andes is just big landscapes. You've got vast expanses of kind of grassland and not much else, and then these huge blue skies, which, I mean, the photo just doesn't really do it justice. But if you flick onto the next one as well, we were pretty soon off the road, off that dirt track, and then into kind of we were just crossing these fields of rocks and grass and so on. But again, we had to navigate our way through all of this and over these rocks and round the edge of the river and so on. And there were definitely points where we sort of felt like we were about to drop off.
This is one of the days where we made some good time today, and we wanted to pull over for lunch, but we kind of wanted to find a decent spot. And after a quick couple of minutes scramble off of the road, we found this sort of gorgeous waterfall. And we managed to just sit down here and really just absorb some of the surroundings we were in. It was quite nice to spend an hour there taking a few photos and relaxing. But it was one of the more sort of peaceful spots along the route.
And while we were walking along the road, we were passing through a huge number of communities, and these often were small villages of maybe 5 or 10 families. So there may be 30, 40, 50 people in the village itself, and this is just a group of sort of a cooperative of families that have grouped together, and they go and harvest all of their crops together. In the bottom of the picture there, you've got corn, maize that they've been growing, and what they do is they just lay it out and they dry it out, which they can then store that for the winter time when they'll be using it, or they'll go and sell it off in their markets.
You can see from this picture some of the landscapes we were walking around. Basically, the corner goes all the way around to the left here and all the way around. After the mountain section came a lot of the valleys, and the river is well below there. So we were basically walking on this road. Pretty dangerous, as it's usually only sort of one way. Their way for going around a corner is just to honk very loudly and hope there's not another car coming. To which we kind of made sure we kept an ear and an eye out to make sure that we weren't on the corner when cars were coming around. But yeah, a little scary. But you could see how deep some of the valleys are, which is kind of gorgeous to walk along.
And eventually we reached the jungle, and this is just as we got down. We really started to notice the temperature change. The air started to get a lot more humid as well. So we kind of really felt as though we were part of the environment in the jungle. Everything seemed to get a lot wetter, and the trees much greener. So and this was kind of really the exciting part when we knew we were ending the walk and about to get in our kayaks.
I believe we let out a little. We're in the jungle, baby! At this point, we got quite excited. And then after the jungle came the kayaks. This is actually in a town called Pachari, which is where we met up with our guide and collected the kayaks, did some repairs, and met with the Marines to get the permissions and everything. This is the kayaks being loaded onto one of our friend of friends that helped us out along the river. We had a lot of people offer support with us. A lot of the kayaking groups along the river in Peru and Brazil both gave us a lot of support, and along with just a lot of locals willing to help us out. And this was no different because we needed to drive a few kilometers to get this taken into the water. So this is then loaded up, and yeah, and then we sort of kayaked along a few days and came to this. Actually, is this Devil's Canyon, Ollie? Or is this
is Devil's Canyon, yeah, in the red zone.
Yeah, in the middle of the red zone. This is Devil's Canyon. We actually pulled up here. It's a gorgeous backdrop. We actually pulled up here, and there was someone living just to the left on a sandbank. So we had to go and ask permission from them to really stay here. And about an hour and a half's time after this, once we were just eating our dinner, we had a couple of fishermen pull up on their little sort of raft boat, and they were fishing catfish right in front of us there. It's very shallow. It turned out I think they were from the village about a day or so ahead. So we ended up stopping in this village. They invited us to come into the village in about a day's paddle away. So the next day we went and paddled there and stopped off and got welcomed into the community briefly.
And this just kind of really highlights how narrow the river was and how sort of intimate the jungle felt. We were paddling along these small, narrow channels, and you can really feel the trees kind of encroaching on the river. You can also smell some of the flowers that are in the trees. You can smell the water. And I don't know if you guys have been to sort of a water theme park, but some of the water smells kind of really stale and a little bit green, and that was exactly how the jungle felt then. And obviously you can also see and hear all the birds and bees and bugs sort of flying around. So it was just a really intimate experience.
This is in Iquitos. We got to Iquitos, the largest I guess city in the world that's not accessible by road. It's only by plane or boat, or in our case kayak. And we reached this city and went to a jungle lodge for 48 hours. Where we got to walk around a lot of the different rainforests, the primary and secondary rainforests, which was great fun. You see these massive trees in there, which have been around for sort of tens of years or hundreds of years. And yeah, this was a really cool time. I know especially Ollie loved getting the gumboots on and getting out into the rainforest.
Absolutely. So once we were back in our kayaks, between Iquitos and the border is an area that's really well known for electrical storms. And these storms, it would be incredibly hot during the morning. We're talking sort of 42 degrees centigrade. And then kind of just early afternoon, just after we'd had our lunch, these storms would just sweep in. And you could see them coming from a mile off. And you'd see the lightning hitting the rainforest in the distance, and ultimately we had to paddle through a lot of these, and we just mainly hugged the riverbanks as best we could in order to make sure we weren't going to get hit by any stray lightning bolts. But obviously the water was the rain was incredibly intense, but it was also a very special moment that everything was just really quiet, and you were really at one with nature, I suppose.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is a very surreal moment where we pulled up in this little village. We were trying to make it another maybe 30 kilometers of a day, but we were also warned that the next village up ahead had a lot of pirate activity. So we opted to pull in rather than risk kayaking at night time through where we were warned about pirates. So we opted to pull into this village slightly earlier, and we were sort of surrounded by sort of 50, 60 people on and off. And really, we pulled our kayaks onto the bank, and at this point, we set our tents up and had no privacy. It's at one point, just everybody was staring at you, and obviously we're in wet clothes, so we've got to get changed. So you kind of just say sorry, and which is disculpa, and kind of strip off naked and get changed. There's really no other choice. But these people had never seen a foreigner. I think they said in the village they'd had some French people visit them a few years ago, but other than that, we were the only sort of gringos that they'd really seen. So they were just fascinated by everything we did. As shown, I think all I'm doing is setting up the coca, and everybody's sort of surrounding us. Eventually, everybody left, and me and Ollie managed to get in the tents. And as we were trying to sleep, we heard that there's like the little tannoy in the village sort of sound out, and they sort of said something, gringos on the beach. And then about half an hour later, a bunch more people came down and shone torches into the tents and woke us up, which was a little annoying, but kind of, yeah, you kind of get on with it. Eventually, they left after about another hour, and then we went back to sleep afterwards. But yeah, very surreal just to be surrounded by people who are just curious about what we're doing, which really wasn't a whole lot. We're just sitting there and eating.
I mean, this is just a classic scene along the Amazon. You've got these huge riverbanks covered in trees, and basically we were just kind of following those as closely as possible. The river starts getting certainly after Manaus, the river starts getting sort of 5, 6, 7 kilometers wide, so you can hardly see the other side of the river. So we would have to pick a side and stick on that side for kind of the next 3 or 4 days ultimately. Because otherwise it would take us an hour to cross the river, or an hour and a half to cross the river, which would then be a huge amount of time just kind of wasted.
I didn't know this photo was in there. That's brilliant.
So just after we left Manaus, actually, we'd planned a really early start, and we got up at about 4:30 in the morning. We had our breakfast, and I was going down to fill up my water bottle just on the rocks on the left-hand side there by the tent. And I don't know what was going on, but suddenly I just felt this sharp pain through my foot, and it then travelled up my leg, and I'd clearly been stung by something. And this obviously delayed us. I had to make a few phone calls on the sat phone to a doctor in the UK just to try and see how we could try and treat this sting. One of the things she said was, try and get Tarran to wee on your foot, and that would the ammonia in your wee will help relieve any of the pain. So this is exactly what Tarran was doing, which I must admit wasn't the nicest of feelings.
For you maybe, not.
Yeah. But it took about 4 or 5 hours for me to regain feeling in my leg. It was one of the most terrifying moments of the trip, because everything else we kind of knew that we had control over, but this moment here, we had no idea what had stung me, and ultimately how to treat it and how to try and get better. So it was incredibly sort of terrifying not knowing any of that.
This is a picture from the coming together of the waters to both the Rio Negros. You can see the Black River and the Rio Solimões on the other, the more sandy one. This is what we were talking about earlier, with the rivers sort of meeting but not joining for sort of 10, 15, 20 miles. So we really just kayaked, I guess, between two rivers for quite some time. As you can see, I've got a stupid grin on my face because I'm pretty happy about it.
And this is just to highlight that point that we made earlier about the having to tie up in the mangroves. As we said, we spent about 6 hours just holding on to these branches and trees just to stay out of the tide and away from the waves while we waited for the tide to turn.
This is the finish line. We, as we said, we managed to take a couple of quick snaps of each other and ourselves. But both of us fully bearded, very, very tired, but as you can see, exhausted but happy. It was yeah, a very cool moment. Yeah. I think we both realised the only reason we did this expedition was definitely to grow big beards. That was it. We realised at the end of all these other reasons to do it, it was just to have a big beard.
And then the final one is once we'd reached that village, it was actually the following morning. We do definitely look a little bit tired, dishevelled, and sort of unkempt, as one of the British newspapers put it. But you know, it was such a relief to reach that final point.
Absolutely.
So that's all our photos, and we'd love to hear some of your questions. Obviously, we've now been through the whole expedition. We've now spent a bit of time back at home and trying to readjust to life, normality, as it were. So yeah, we'd love to hear some of your questions.
All right, well, guys, that's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing. And I know, you know, we've mentioned the beards a few times, but I do recall from our last session that you did say those beards probably protected you too and intimidated some of the other people on the river. So it really came in handy, it sounds like.
Protected, intimidated, plus made us look very sort of feral and wildly, and also very poor, so people didn't want to rob us, which I think worked in our favour.
All right, very cool. Well, let's introduce our classrooms joining today, and then we'll grab a couple questions from each to start. So, from St. Pat's School in Cobalt, Ontario, we have grade 5-6s joining us and some grade 7-8 students joining us. And this classroom has joined us all the way through. So both hangouts, previous ones. We've got Mr. Greenfield, his grade 5s in Freehold, New Jersey, and his classrooms have joined us all the way through as well. Mrs. Capone's grade 5s, they're in Freehold, New Jersey as well. I did mention you guys have a huge following in New Jersey. You'll have to get there someday.
Celebrities in New Jersey.
Yeah, so I believe Mrs. Capone's class has joined us for the last one. So this will be their second one so far. They joined us in Manaus. Mr. Wigmore's classroom, this is pretty cool. They're in Ontario, Canada. And he's got grade 4s with him today. But he's also got his grade 5 class who joined last year before you guys left from Lima, Peru, which is really cool.
Yeah, amazing.
And then another class from New Jersey. You guys are superstars. Mrs. Blessing's grade 7s from Eisenhower Middle School are joining us today as well. So let's jump to some of those questions. So Mr. Greenfield, I'm turning your mic and camera back on. And fire away a couple questions for Tarran and Olie.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth. Did you ever stop at a random citizen's house for food, sleep, or just to talk to them and know the town?
Yeah, really good question. We did stop at actually quite a few different people's houses. One of the ones in Brazil, as we got closer to the water, I guess to the Atlantic, sorry, the sandbanks that we've been sleeping on for many months before sort of disappeared. So we really had to go and stay at people's houses. So we'd pull up about 5:30 and really just sort of ask anyone on the riverbank, can we stay on your property? Can we stay on your deck, on your lawn? And sort of 95% of the time, they would say, yeah, you can stay here. And then I think most of the time they would invite us in and give us food, and we would end up eating with the family. Lots of acai and farinha, which is the sort of grain that you sort of mix into the acai there, which is a kind of a very it grows quite regularly along the Amazon itself. So yeah, we really rely on the kindness of strangers to feed us and house us for the last, I guess, couple of weeks.
All right, let's grab another one.
Hi, my name is Justin. What was one of your most challenging experiences on the trip, and what did it do to you?
Ollie, you there? I think we seem to have lost Ollie for the moment.
Looks like he's frozen for the moment, but hopefully he'll pop back in.
Oh goodness. One of the most challenging experiences. I mean, there were lots of different challenges. I think as the river got bigger, the wind became stronger because it had a lot more space to pick up speed, and also the waves. So we kind of had days where we would joke about the trifecta of our worst nightmare, which was very strong winds, a very strong tide, and very, very big waves. And as we got closer, we ended up sort of not having one or two of them. We ended up having just all three on certain days, which as we try and avoid some of that by sticking close to the bank and picking the time we kayaked to not to be in the waves. But probably one of the most difficult things, one of the most annoying things of the whole trip was the mosquitoes. We had a lot of mosquitoes every time we pulled up to the finish. We had about an hour to get in our tent, and they became worse and worse right towards the end. I think at certain points we would pull up, wash quickly, and then I think we even heated up the water quickly, put the hot water into the food packaging, and then jumped in our tents and had to eat in our tents because there was a couple of hundred mosquitoes around. So that was one of the more annoying things. But you just deal with it when you're out there.
Okay, looks like Ollie's back too. Can you hear us okay, Ollie?
Yeah, that sounded like a good question.
You got the next one.
Thank you, Mr. Greenfield. We'll pop back at the end maybe for a final question as well. Mr. Call, I'm going to turn your camera and microphone on.
Good morning.
What was your favorite day of the journey?
Wow, my favourite day was one of the photos we showed you actually, where we just kayaked through the Devil's Canyon. It's the one with the few tents up on the front on the sandbank there, and when the fishermen came to meet us, it just been I think it had been quite a hard day. We'd capsized a few times, but as I said earlier, the jungle kind of felt really kind of intimate, and we really felt part of the jungle. And then we got the opportunity to meet some of the local fishermen and the people that live along the river there. And that was kind of our first experience of that once we started kayaking. So that was definitely my favourite day. Tarran,
Okay.
I don't know if you want to jump in.
Yeah. I love that all. One of my favourite days, or my favourite day, probably was before we reached, still in Peru, before we reached Iquitos. I remember sort of kayaking along. We was in one of those sort of electrical storms that Ollie was talking about earlier, where there was sort of thunder. There was a storm behind us, and then a storm coming towards us, and there was thunder, lightning, and lots of rain. And it was kind of in the middle of the river where there was no riverbank in sight, and really I started kayaking and thinking this is wonderful, and then all of a sudden a couple of dolphins popped up either side of me and were sort of swimming under the kayak, and I ended up having a sort of pod of dolphins that followed me along for maybe an hour or so, which was just amazing, having these pink and blue dolphins sort of basically traveling with you for a couple of hours in the middle of this storm in the Amazon. It was really quite a cool moment.
All right, grab another question from Mr. Call's class.
You said you were stung by something once and it really hurt, and what was it?
I never actually found out. We asked some of the local people that we met, and they thought it could have been something like a stingray, just a very small stingray, which we did see a few of those around. But ultimately, I never actually found out what it was, and I wish I did know, because I'd know what to do with it next time.
All right, so before I jump to the next class, we do have quite a few classes. I'm just watching the viewing numbers at the bottom who are watching live. If you do want to ask a question, you can submit a question to the event page, and I'll keep an eye out for them. We actually do have a classroom from the UK. A classroom looks like Mrs. Parker, based in Poole, Dorset, in the UK, and they're wondering, start to finish, how long was the journey?
About four and a half months. What was the total days, Ollie, we work out?
We spent 36 days walking, and we then kayaked for 95 days. So it was a total of 131 days of just constantly being on the move and traveling. day in, day out.
All right, awesome. Well, I'm glad. It's very exciting to see we have classes not just in North America, but we do have some. Looks like this one is Hamworthy Park Junior School in Dorset in the UK, so that's pretty cool.
Fantastic.
Mrs. Blessings, grade 7s in New Jersey. Your mic and camera are on.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jenna. You gave up a lot to embark on the journey. Were the sacrifices you made worth your accomplishment?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's kind of a good question because you don't necessarily think about you obviously think about the sacrifices before you go. But yeah, I think for both of us, it was an amazing expedition, something we're going to remember for the rest of our lives. And yeah, for me, 100% was worth the sacrifice. At the time when you're out there, at certain moments when it's tough, you kind of your mind wanders a bit. But I don't think it ever sort of shifted from the fact that this is an epic expedition and adventure. And even in some of the trying times, you just become really fortunate to be out there. Yeah, it was really cool.
Okay. One more for Mrs. Blessings' class. I know you guys have to run soon.
Did this journey change your perspective on the world, and if so, how?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it really opened my eyes up to how generous people can be, and it was amazing. Every person, every Peruvian or Brazilian that we spoke to they were so generous to us, so kind, and they were really interested in everything that we were doing and why we were doing it. And I just don't think I've ever experienced that before. Certainly in the UK, I think it probably does happen, but it's not evident in every single thing you do. But on the Amazon, you know, we were just taken in at every possible opportunity. Someone wanted to find out what we were doing or give us something, even if it was just a few words of encouragement. So yeah, it's definitely changed my perspective on life and traveling as well.
Okay, thanks for the questions. Mrs. Capone's class, your microphone's on.
All right, Haley, go first.
Hi, I'm Haley. What gave you the idea to kayak down the Amazon River?
Hey Haley, it was a kind of I guess a joint understanding. I'd sort of thought about kayaking the Amazon maybe when I was in Thailand and looking at a few different rivers to swim down a kayak, and I was initially looking at the Danube River, and I basically looked at the Amazon, and there was a new source they'd found in 2012, which then made the Amazon River the longest river in the world, and that was really just kind of tipped the scales for me when I looked at it and thought, this is not only is it sort of a great way to experience the culture of Peru and Brazil from the river itself. It was really just kind of getting out onto the river and immersing ourselves in nature. And I know when I met up with Olie, it seemed to sink in unison. He was looking for something to do, and he was actually going to roll around Britain at the time, and that had sort of fallen through, as sometimes happens. And he'd been out to the jungle when he was sort of 18, 19, and really loved it. So really, it was kind of a match made in heaven. He wanted to get back out to the river, and I wanted a teammate, so we formed a team. And the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Kevin. And I was wondering, do you have a future adventure that you're planning together?
Well, I mean, we got back in. Well, I got back at the end of November. I had another few weeks traveling after the Amazon trip, and so I got back in November, and I think it's taken a couple of months just to really kind of settle back into the UK and just really understand the achievement that we've just done. It was, as we said, it was sort of a 4.5-month expedition that took a lot out of our bodies and so on. And so yeah, I mean, ultimately we will be planning something again in the future, but at the moment it's just kind of really trying to understand what we've done, and also, you know, talk to different classrooms and tell people about this adventure. So I think later in the year we'll both have something up our sleeve.
All right, well, great questions, guys. And Mr. Wigmore's class. So this is the classroom where they've got visitors from grade 5 visiting them who connected with you guys first last year when you were in Peru. So here we go.
Go grade 5.
All right, here you go.
What was it like when you were in the red zone?
Great question. The red zone was kind of scary at the same time, really fascinating, because it was the first time we'd gotten into kayak, so we had a number of different things happening at the once. The first one was we were learning how to kayak in sea kayaks for the first time, and falling out of the kayaks and getting to grips of it. The second was we were doing this in the most dangerous part in South America, and it was a very, I guess, sort of fairly scary initially when you're confronted every day or every second day by people holding sort of shotguns and marching you to the bank because they want to see your papers. At the plus side of that, we were also, once we kind of got beyond that hurdle, we also were invited in to sit and chat with and meet some of the people that live along the river, and one of the tribes called the Ashkaninka tribe, which we would have to, when they invited us in, we would have to, I guess, drink this drink called masato, which is an incredibly disgusting jungle drink, but they give it to you to kind of welcome you to their community. So it had everything from being really scared to really enjoying the kayak because the river was so narrow. It was really gorgeous to kayak amongst the rainforest, and then to meet the tribes. And obviously it's also, you're kind of on high alert because of the dangers and the dangerous elements. Plus there's rapids around. So it was, yeah, we had a great time in this section because it was our first time in the kayak, having walked for some 36 days. We were kind of scared, excited, happy, nervous, and just really enjoying the experience.
All right, Sierra.
All right, let's snag another one.
Hi, my name is Sierra, and I wanted to ask you, why did you wear these special glasses that had little cameras in them?
So they were one of our sponsors, actually. They're an American company called Pivot Head, and it just allowed us to do a little bit of secret filming. So things like when we were going in to meet one of the village tribal leaders, it gave us the opportunity to actually film some of that, which we're hoping to share with you guys at some point in the near future.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is we still have 10 minutes before 10 o'clock, but what I will do, I know Mrs. Blessing's class has to switch now, so maybe I'll just turn your mic on so you guys can say goodbye and thank you to Tarran and Olie. So.
Good.
No.
See you again soon.
Fun.
Okay, and if any other classes do need to run because their period's cutting short, feel free to log off. But let's see if we have time to snag one more from each group. So back to Mr. Greenfield. Do you have another question? I'll turn your mic and camera back on. There we go.
Hi, my name is Julian. Were there any landscapes that were hard to travel through?
Were there any landscapes that were hard to travel through? I think right at the start, the mountains that we had to climb up and down were pretty ridiculous. I remember one night, I'm sure Ollie remembers this quite well as well. It was, we basically we must walk up a ridge, and I'd actually walked the wrong way, so we ended up having to walk up and down over this other huge ridge. And what it turned out to be was there was a town. We're talking maybe 5 kilometers down this mountain. The angle of it was something crazy. So we would end up zigzagging down this mountainside, so we didn't slip down it. And then we eventually made it onto like a goat track and had to wind our way round. At the same time, the mountain was very steep. We also realized at this point that we were running out of water and it was getting dark. So we were trying to hurriedly go down this mountain and we were getting tired. So it was very difficult. We actually took turns in taking the lead there. We didn't even talk about it. Subconsciously, Ollie would walk in front for a bit, and then he would get tired because the light would be quite dim, and then I'd end up taking the lead. We were trying to hurry to get down because it got pitch black. We eventually got down to the bottom and managed to flag a car over and ask for some water. But yeah, right at the start, the mountains were ridiculous to climb up and down. Incredibly fun, but but quite tough.
Okay, so I'm going to go to Mr. Call's class now. But before I do, I just want to share a message they sent me. So they heard us talking, Tarran and Olie, they heard us talking beforehand. I showed you we had about 6 inches or so of snow, but they can even top that. They have 20 to 30 right now and more coming tomorrow. So
wow.
20, 30 centimeters. So they've got a nice little bit of snow there.
Everybody's rolling around in the snow. Snow angels, snow fights, definitely. That's awesome.
Snow cones.
All right, Mr. Call, if you have one more question.
It's all you.
What was your favorite animal that you've seen on your adventure?
What did you go first, Joel?
Well, we were fortunate enough. We saw a lot of pink dolphins, as Tarran's already said, but we were fortunate enough while we were walking through the jungle to see a sloth. Which is it's about the size of a small teddy bear, and it lives up in the trees, and they move incredibly slowly. And we were walking through the jungle, and we saw this little guy up in the top of the tree. And so I started climbing up a tree to go and get a bit of a closer look and get a good photo. And as I did that, the sloth started climbing higher and higher up his branch, and then the branch suddenly snapped. The branch he was on was rotten. So luckily below him was our guide. So he managed to grab the sloth, and we obviously then were able to take a few photos before we put him back in a much safer tree. But that was probably the coolest animal we got to see up close.
All right.
Absolutely. As well as I guess a couple of crocodiles one late evening, which wasn't quite as cool, but it was quite a funny experience kayaking along. I remember we kayaked past this little village, and I asked if we could stay on someone's land. It was actually the only time that someone refused to stay there, so we had to kayak back about a kilometre. And as we stopped, pulled our kayaks in quickly, and asked this little family on the edge of the riverbank, "Can we stay here?" They had the generator running, and they sort of said, yeah, you can pull up, you can camp. And then they said, actually, you can stay in our spare house attached to their main house. Just kayak around this little cove bit. As we're kayaking along, the sort of head torch is beaming out, and you see these couple of little lights, and you're like, oh, they've got lights here. And you realise very quickly that they're not lights, they're crocodile eyes, and they're a couple of metres away from us. And that was quite a surreal experience when we kayak up, and then for some reason, Ollie asked them, can we bathe? And there was a bucket hanging over the side of this little house that led into the river. We're thinking, okay, there's crocodiles in there. We'll just dip the bucket in and use the bucket to wash. And as we got out there, they all just jumped in the river. We're standing there going, what? And then one of the guys points out with his torch, oh, there's about 50 meters away, there's a huge crocodile there. But all these guys are in the river, and we're like, okay, we're kind of here mixing with them. We'll jump in. It was quite funny when we jumped in. Obviously, washed incredibly quickly. Ollie will remember this. One of the sort of freshwater shrimps jumped down onto Ollie's back at the same time. Now that would have Ollie dealt with it quite well. It would have scared the hell out of me. But it was quite a funny moment, just being washing very, very quickly, surrounded by crocodiles and a few Amazonian men. It was hilarious. Probably not the smartest decision though.
No.
I'm not advocating swimming with crocodiles. Don't swim with crocodiles.
Okay, good answer and good disclaimer to follow. Mrs. Capone, your microphone and camera are on.
Besides the crocodile,
Hi, my name is Paige. And besides the crocodile, what other dangerous animals did you see on your trip?
Well, there was one morning we woke up and we'd been camping on a sandbank for the night, and we woke up and there were jaguar footprints around our tent, which they weren't there the night before. So I don't know if you've seen a jaguar before, but they're quite big. They're about 1.5 meters long. But this one also had a baby with it as well. There were some really small footprints as well. But I don't know how we didn't wake up in the middle of the night when they walked past us, but they were incredibly quiet. And that was probably the scariest, I think, sort of the closest we got to a really dangerous animal.
Okay, and then Mr. Wigmore will give you the final question with your group of grade 4s and grade 5s.
Hi, I'm Eric.
Hi, I'm Eric. I was wondering which of the zones was your favorite?
Can you say that again, Eric?
Listen, say it again.
Out of all of the zones, which was your favorite?
By that you mean the favorite part of the river?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say that each section of it held a different excitement for it. Walking was quite incredible, and then the river being really close was quite incredible. I'd say probably for me the last 10 days were sort of ridiculous. They were very, very tough, very sort of brutal, and you're really tired, but you just got to keep on pushing, and the river gets massive at this point. But I mean, I really enjoyed that element of it, being able to sort of push against the elements and know that you're not far away from the end, and kind of just keep going. So the last section of it for me was awesome. And also, you know, you're finishing the expedition, which you've been dreaming about for 1.5 years. So that was really quite cool.
And for me, I think it was the red zone, actually. I just really enjoyed the intimacy of the jungle and meeting the tribes and kind of really getting to know the river. So that was definitely my favorite part.
All right. Well, Tarran and Olie, it's been an absolute pleasure to share your adventure, really from start to finish with these classrooms, and I can't thank you guys enough for wanting to do it as well. And you know, I know it wasn't easy from some spots, especially like Manaus, when you're scrambling around looking for an internet signal, but muchly appreciated. And you can see from here that not only did classrooms start checking it out, but they followed all the way through. So it's really nice to have them, that whole progression. So guys, I can't thank you enough.
Well, thank you. We've really enjoyed it as well. We've loved every question that we've been asked, and you know, it's got us thinking about different things that we can do, and sort of different views on our adventure as well. So it's been, as I say, it's been really cool.
Yeah, I echo that, mate. Thank you very much, Joe, for putting it all together and for all the classrooms joining. It's been really cool to sort of, a lot of the classes come back and sort of follow the journey with us. We really thoroughly enjoyed it, enjoyed the expedition, and hopefully you guys have got a little insight into the expedition world itself. So we'll be seeing your names on an expedition at some point in the next couple of years, after high school, obviously.
All right. Well, we'll definitely be keeping an eye out to see what comes next for you guys. And I'm going to turn the mics and cameras on again so our classrooms can say goodbye and thank you, and then we'll log out for today. So here we go. Turn it on.
Not on.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody. Tarran and Olie, thanks so much. And I guess we're signing off. Officially, Amazon River Run completed.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Cheers, everybody.